Last week, we took Amtrak's Empire Builder from St. Paul to Seattle. We spent 2 nights in coach as we traveled through Glacier National Park and the Cascade Mountains. This week, our time in Alaska begins as we arrive in Glacier Bay National Park.
We had an early start the next day as we headed back to the Juneau Airport to catch a flight to Gustavus, where Glacier Bay is located. We booked through the Alaska Seaplanes, and the experience of riding in the small plane was so much fun. After only about 20 minutes, we arrived in Gustavus and had a shuttle to take us the remaining 10 minutes to the park.
We made it to Alaska and Glacier Bay National Park and Preserve, our 19th national park. Glacier Bay was established in 1980 and protects a large bay and several glaciers on the Alaska coastline. There are no roads that lead in or out of the park from Juneau, so you can take a vehicle twice a week on a ferry, otherwise the main ways to arrive are via plane or boat.
Roughly 80% of the park's visitors arrive via cruise ship. A limited number of cruise ships are allowed into the bay itself each day for sightseeing. Today we have a boat tour of the park, which will allow us to see as much as possible that we otherwise couldn't on foot.
It's an 8-hour tour and we are really looking forward to it. The boat had plenty of space for the amount of people we had on board. It even had a gift shop where you could buy souvenirs and food. The boat also offers complimentary hot chocolate and coffee throughout the trip. Even with the overall nice weather, it was a little chilly outside with the wind, so we split our time between the main deck and the cabin. A lot of the smaller marine wildlife like otters and birds aren't coming through great on video, but we've seen a lot of whale activity too. Some of them surfacing, other ones just shooting their blowhole, but we barely even left the port and we've seen so much wildlife.
Although it's a little tricky to make out, the dark brown spots covering the rocks are sea lions. The rocks were also home to a number of birds, such as puffins and cormorants.
We made a couple stops along the way to pick up backcountry kayakers and backpackers, another service that the boat tour offers. The boat also had a ranger from the National Park Service on board the entire time. He offered narration, pointed out wildlife, and had the cancellation stamp for passport books with him.
Another one that's tricky to see. We saw a couple of mountain goats on the ridge. One of them is to the left of the tree and the other one is below it.
Unfortunately, we were informed that one of the 2 engines on the boat is having some trouble, So in order to make it back by 3:30, because people have connecting flights and just the risk of getting stranded out here, we had to turn around before we got to Marjorie Glacier and the Grand Pacific Glacier. So that's really disappointing. It sucks to come all this way and not be able to see the main attractions. Yeah. We were thankfully able to see a few other glaciers like Lame Blue and Reed, and thankfully we also have the Kenai Fjords tour where we'll be able to see some glaciers further down the road. So that's disappointing, but we're not going to let that eat into our journey. It's been absolutely gorgeous nonetheless, and we're still thankful we were able to make it out this way and see a lot of the beauty Southeast Alaska has to offer. That was amazing. Even with the little hiccup and not being able to see the main glaciers, we were able to see a few other ones. The weather was perfect, especially for the area, and we saw tons of wildlife. We saw like goats, bears,
lots of sea otters,
and whales. The whales were especially active on the way back too. So even with not being able to see the main stuff, it was still an amazing time, and we're really glad we were able to make the trip out this way. Have to catch a flight back to Juneau now, where we'll get a connecting flight to Fairbanks tomorrow.